An old house doesn't just hold furniture, it holds history. Over 3 generations, the walls of this home have absorbed weddings, festivals, and the low-frequency hum of accumulated, unspoken family tension. Inside, 3 lives are operating in separate orbits. Rohan is the exhausted provider, returning every evening drained from work. Mira carries the daily burden of the household, managing a never-ending cycle of chores. And Savitri, Rohan's mother, watches it all, struggling to find her place in a kitchen she used to command. The friction is constant. It's the collision of Savitri's lifelong habit of being in charge against Mira's quiet exhaustion from doing the work without the authority. It comes out in small, sharp bursts. During dinner, Savitri might mention how much better the doll would have been if she'd made it herself. It's a critique disguised as a suggestion, and it lands heavily on Mira, who has been working since dawn. Rohan sees the tension, but he chooses to say nothing. He retreats into a shell of neutrality, believing that if he doesn't take a side, the conflict will eventually burn itself out. But look at how this silence actually functions. By refusing to engage, Rohan isn't keeping the peace. He's inadvertently reinforcing the distance between his mother and his wife, turning temporary disagreements into permanent barriers. When the person who could bridge the gap chooses to stay quiet, the silence doesn't resolve anything. It acts as a pressure cooker, allowing minor daily slights to harden into structural cracks in the family's foundation. As the weeks pass, the house grows physically colder. Meals are eaten in a heavy, focused silence. People move through the hallways carefully, timing their movements to ensure they don't have to share the same room. This lack of shouting doesn't mean the conflict has ended. In many ways, the absence of an argument creates a much more hostile environment, where every unsaid word feels like an accusation. Savitri remains locked in her own reality. By trying to maintain her old grip on the household, she has managed to push away the very people she wants to be close to. For Mira, the silence is equally isolating. Without any validation for her efforts, her daily work starts to feel like a sentence, and her patience begins to turn into a deep, quiet resentment. When communication stops, the home stops being a sanctuary. It becomes a place of shared confinement, where ego keeps everyone trapped in their own version of the story. The break comes on an ordinary afternoon. The kitchen is quiet, but the air is still thick with the usual unaddressed tension. Savitri decides to reach for a heavy jar on a high shelf. She doesn't ask for help. Asking would mean admitting she isn't in control, so she climbs onto a small, unstable stool. In a split second, her balance gives way. The stool tips, and she begins to fall toward the hard floor. Mira is across the room, but she doesn't hesitate. She doesn't think about the dinner table arguments or the cold weeks of silence. She lunges forward and catches Savitri before she hits the ground. As they steady each other, Mira immediately asks if she's okay. In that moment of genuine fear, the elaborate walls they've built over the last few months simply vanish. Physical vulnerability has a way of bypassing the ego. It forces a sudden, honest connection that reveals the basic care that was there all along, hidden under the need to be right. When Rohan returns that evening, he's prepared for the usual cold atmosphere. He expects to walk into another night of avoiding eye contact and navigating the silence. Instead, he finds his mother and his wife sitting together over tea. The change in the room is immediate. The sharp, defensive energy has finally softened.
Savitri is the first to speak. She admits that she's been so focused on how things should be done that she stopped noticing she was making it impossible for anyone else to live there. Mira realizes something too. She sees that Savitri's constant advice wasn't an attack, but a clumsy attempt to still feel useful in a house that was slowly changing without her. This is how a resolution actually starts. It's not a grand gesture. It's one person being vulnerable enough to admit a mistake, which finally makes it safe for the other person to lower their guard. Rohan finally understands that his silence wasn't helping. Keeping a family together requires more than just staying out of the way. It requires the active, often uncomfortable work of listening to both sides. The house doesn't become perfect overnight. There are still disagreements and bad days, but now they approach those moments with a new baseline of patience, choosing to hear each other out before the walls start to go back up. A home is held together by the people inside it. When the ego is set aside for empathy and listening becomes more important than winning, even the deepest misunderstandings have the chance to heal.